You are living in the most medically advanced moment in human history. The average life expectancy in most of the world today is somewhere between 70 and 80 years. Your ancestors lived to about 35, and here's the part that nobody tells you. That number is almost completely misleading. Your ancestors didn't drop dead at 35. The real story of how long ancient humans actually lived and why so many died so young is far stranger and more disturbing than any statistic can capture. Let's start with what that number actually means. When historians and anthropologists say ancient humans had a life expectancy of 35, they are calculating an average, and averages are deeply sensitive to outliers, especially extreme ones, especially at the low end. Think about it this way. Take a group of 10 people. 8 of them live to 70. 2 of them die at birth. The average lifespan of that group is 57 years. But if you just hear average lifespan of 57, you might conclude that most people in that group died in their mid-50s, which is completely wrong. Now apply that logic to prehistoric population, where infant and child mortality wasn't 2 out of 10. It was closer to 5 or 6 out of 10. In pre-modern populations without antibiotics, without sterile medical environments, without clean water, without vaccines, roughly half of all children born died before reaching the age of 5. Not because ancient humans were weak or stupid, not because their lives were uniquely brutal, but because the specific threats that kill children, infection, dehydration from diarrhea, respiratory illness, injury, were completely unmanageable without modern medicine. When you remove those deaths from the calculation, the picture changes dramatically. Ancient humans who survived childhood had a reasonable chance of living into their 50s or 60s. Some lived longer, a lot longer than the textbooks suggest. But here is where it gets genuinely disturbing, because infant mortality explains the statistic. It doesn't explain every death. And the specific things that killed the ancient humans who did survive childhood are worth understanding. Not because they're ancient history, but because several of them are still inside you right now. The first and biggest killer after childhood was infection. Not from wounds necessarily, from teeth. This is the one almost nobody talks about. Your mouth is a bacterial ecosystem. In the modern world, we brush, we floss, we use antiseptic mouthwash. We see dentists twice a year who scrape calculus off our teeth. In the ancient world, none of that existed. Tooth decay was rampant. Abscesses form. Infection spread. A dental abscess that reaches the jawbone can kill a person within days. Without antibiotics, there is essentially no way to stop it. Skeletal analysis of ancient populations consistently shows severe dental disease in adults of all ages. Not just the very old. People in their 20s and 30s dying from infections that started in their mouths. People who had survived childhood, survived predators, survived winters, killed by a tooth. The second major killer was childbirth. Not just for women, for infants too. But for women in particular, childbirth was the single most dangerous recurring event in a human life. The obstetric dilemma, the fact that human babies have enormous heads relative to the birth canal, made human birth dramatically more dangerous than birth in any other mammal. Without surgical intervention, a baby in the wrong position is a death sentence for both mother and child. Without blood transfusions, hemorrhage during birth kills. Without antibiotics, postpartum infection kills. And these aren't rare complications. They are common ones. Researchers examining skeletal remains from prehistoric populations have found evidence of childbirth-related deaths in women as young as 16 and 17. Women who had survived every other threat the ancient world threw at them, killed by the one thing their bodies were supposedly designed to do. The third killer is the one that surprises people most: violence. Not from predators, from other humans. The data on prehistoric violence is genuinely shocking. Analysis of skeletal remains from sites across Europe, Asia, and the Americas consistently shows rates of traumatic injury and death by violence that are significantly higher than almost any modern society. Crushed skulls, embedded projectile points, evidence of scalping, evidence of massacre sites where entire groups were killed. This is not a comfortable thing to sit with. The idea of ancient humans as gentle, harmony with nature hunter-gatherers is comforting. It is also not supported by the physical evidence. Conflict between groups over territory, resources, and mates was a significant cause of death, particularly for young men, particularly in the 15 to 35 age range, which, incidentally, is exactly the age range that pulls the average lifespan statistic down. But here is what the statistic completely hides: the survivors. Because for every ancient human who died young, from infection, from childbirth, from violence, there were others who didn't. And what happened to them is fascinating. Anthropological studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups, the closest living approximation of how your ancestors lived, have found consistent evidence that older individuals are not just present but essential. Elders who survived childhood disease, who survived the reproductive years, who survived conflict, these individuals became the most valuable members of their groups. The grandmother hypothesis, one of the most compelling ideas in evolutionary anthropology. It proposes that the reason humans have such unusually long post-reproductive lifespans, decades of life after the ability to reproduce ends, which is almost unique among mammals, is because because older individuals, particularly grandmothers, provided such enormous survival value to the group. They remembered where water sources were during droughts. They knew which plants were poisonous and which were medicinal. They had seen disease outbreaks before and knew which behaviors helped people survive them. They carried in their memories decades of accumulated knowledge that could not be written down but could not be lost without catastrophic consequences. The 60-year-old elder in a hunter-gatherer group wasn't a burden. They were the most important person there. And here is what all of this means for the way you think about your own life. The 35-year average is not a description of ancient human lives. It is a description of ancient child mortality, of the extraordinary, invisible, relentless danger of being born into a world without germ theory, without clean water, without any of the medical infrastructure that most people alive today take completely for granted. The ancient humans who made it through that gauntlet, who survived the first 5 years, who survived the reproductive years, who survived conflict and infection and winter, often lived longer than you might think. And they lived those years with a density of experience, of skill, of knowledge, of connection to the people around them that is almost impossible for modern humans to imagine. Your great-great-grandmother from 50,000 years ago, if she survived to 40, had buried children, had survived winters that would hospitalize you, had navigated social dynamics within her group with a level of skill that modern humans rarely develop, had accumulated knowledge about her landscape, her plants, her animals that took decades to build. She was not old at 40, she was formidable. And the biology she used to get there is still inside you. The immune system that learned to fight infection, the social instincts that built the alliances that kept her alive, the cognitive systems that stored and organized decades of survival knowledge. The ancient humans who died young left their mark on history too, but the ones who didn't, the ones who survived everything, left their mark on you.